glad you're here. Let's start by calling the roll, staff, if you would.
Chairman Latour.
Here.
Vice Chair Hamilton. Commissioner Berry.
Here.
Commissioner Benton.
Here.
Commissioner Brock.
Here.
Commissioner Brooks.
Here.
Commissioner Hart.
Here.
Commissioner Haynes. Commissioner Ramon.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
And Commissioner Vogel.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. You've been given the minutes of the last meeting. Would there be a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda, including all staff
No,
comments.
the minutes, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I know I did you wrong. Go ahead, Craig.
Oh.
I did you wrong, I'm sorry.
I move for the approval of the minutes from the December 5th, 2019 meeting of the Little Rock Planning Commission.
Is there a second? There is a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Those opposed, raise your hand. And please note Commissioner Haynes is here. Okay, with that, would you take us through the consent agenda, please, sir?
Following is a consent agenda for the Little Rock Planning Commission Planning Rezoning Conditional Use Hearing of January 30th, 2020. There's one item on consent withdrawal, item number 5, file number Z6408A, St. Bartholomew Catholic Church Parish Hall, conditional use permit, 1622 Marshall Street. Staff recommends withdrawal of the conditional use application. Item number 2, number 2 would be consent deferral. One item on consent deferral, item 4, Z4474A, Unitarian Universalist Church, revised CUP, 1818 Reservoir Road. Staff recommends deferral of this item to the March 12th, 2020 agenda. Next are the items on consent approval. Item A, Z5652B, Recovery Centers of Arkansas Group Care Facility, revised special use permit, 9219 Sibley Hole Road. Staff recommends approval of the SUP to allow continuation of a group care facility at 9219 Sibley Hole Road, subject to compliance with the provisions of Section 3654E4 of the City Zoning Ordinance. Item number 1, Z9484, a rezoning from R3 to R4, 1705, 1709, 1719, 1919, 1921, and 1923 South Cedar Street. Staff recommends approval of the requested R4 rezoning subject to the following conditions as offered by the applicant. There'll be no direct vehicular access from South Cedar Street to any of the 6 lots. All vehicular access to the 3 lots within the 1700 block of South Cedar Street will be via the platted alley right-of-way along their east property lines. And all of the vehicular access for the 3 lots within the 1900 block of South Cedar Street will be via the platted alley right-of-way along their east property lines or from Charles Bussey Avenue with a future dedicated easement along the lot's rear or east property lines. Item number 6, Z8898B, Phillips Duplex Conditional Use Permit, 3316 Longcoy. Staff recommends approval of the requested CUP subject to compliance with the following conditions. Compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in sections 4, 5, and 6 and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. In this lot, which is lot 4, and the adjacent lot to the south, lot 2R, are to be replatted so as to move the common lot line 5 feet to the south, providing a 5-foot side yard for the proposed duplex on lot 4. We received a call from the John Barron Neighborhood Association on this item, and they support this application. Item number 7, Z9485, Strong Accessory Dwelling Conditional Use Permit, 205 Ridgeway. Staff recommends approval of the CUP subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in sections 4, 5, and 6 and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. Item 8, Z9486, Scott Accessory Dwelling Conditional Use Permit, 5312 B Street. Staff recommends approval of the CUP subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in sections 4, 5, and 6 of the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. Staff also recommends approval of a variance to allow neither dwelling to be occupied by the property owners. And the final item on consent approval, item number 9, LA 85, STT Incorporated, Tree Harvest Remediation Variant, 6600 Interstate 30. Staff recommends approval of the variance from Section 29-196 of the Land Alteration Regulations, Land Restoration Requirements to replant trees and shrubs in conformance with the landscape and buffer requirements as shown on the submitted remediation planning plan, subject to compliance with staff comments and conditions as found in paragraphs D and E. Staff believes due to the zoning of the area and city codes, trees are not required to be planted adjacent to the north, south, and west property lines, but the frontage along I-30 should be planted to meet the landscape and buffer code requirements. That completes the consent agenda.
Okay, you've heard the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve it?
I move that we approve the consent agenda, including all staff comments and conditions.
It's been moved. Is there a second on the consent agenda? Second. It's been moved and seconded. If you're in favor of the consent agenda, please raise your hand. If you're not, same sign. And I thank you very much. Before we get into the regular agenda, let me just, for the commission's note, there will not be an informal meeting on February 6th. So for your calendars. Staff, would you take us, we have one regular item, I'm sorry. If your name was called, if your item was called, you feel free to leave. You're welcome to stay, but if your item was called, have a good evening. The two items that are left on the regular agenda, we're gonna go through the hearing on both items at the same time. At the end, there will be a separate vote on item 2 and a vote on item 3. So, but as far as the hearing, it's basically the same property on the same block in the same area, so save some time. So, Monty, if you'll take us through initially on that.
Item 2, file number Z9487. It's property located at 2112 and 2114 Wilson Road, owned by Tony Dolmer. Daniel Thomas of Elite Foam Insulators is the applicant. Tony Dolmer, owner of this 0.2945 acre property located at 2112 and 2114 Wilson Road, is requesting to rezone the property from R2 single family district to R4 two family district. The property is located at the southwest corner of Wilson Road and West 22nd Street. The property is comprised of two lots, which are lots 14 and 15, Block 2, Hicks Center Urban Edition. The rezoning is proposed to allow construction of one duplex structure on each lot. The property is currently undeveloped. The property has a slight slope downward from north to south, and this property is located in an area of mixed R2 and R4 zoning. R4 zone lots are located immediately to the south and southwest. Single-family lots are located to the east, north, and northwest. Additional single-family residences, two-family residences, and vacant lots are located throughout the subdivision. Several older manufactured or mobile homes are located within this subdivision. Item number 3, file number Z9488. Property located at 2224 and 2226 Wilson Road. The owner is Elite Foam Insulators, represented by Daniel Thomas. Elite Foam Insulators, owner of this 0.31 acre property located at 2224 and 2226 Wilson Road, is requesting to rezone the property from R2 single family district to R4 two family district. The property is located on the west side of Wilson Road, south of West 22nd Street. The property is comprised of two lots, lots 23 and lot 24, Block 2, Hicks Interurban Edition. The rezoning is proposed to allow construction of one duplex on each lot. The property currently contains 3 older single-wide manufactured home structures. One paved driveway from Wilson Road serves as access to the residences. The property has a slight slope downward from west to east. The property is located in an area of mixed R2 and R4 zoning. R4 zone lots are located to the north and southwest. Single-family lots are located to the east, west, and south. Additional single-family residences, two-family residences, and vacant lots are located throughout this subdivision, along with several other older manufactured mobile homes. Staff is not supportive of the requested R4 rezoning as requested in items 2 and 3. Staff does not view the request as reasonable. Over the past several years, a number of the lots within this neighborhood have been rezoned to R4 for the development of duplexes. As such, slightly over 10% of this neighborhood is currently zoned R4. Staff's concerns relate to the changing density within this subdivision with respect to the city's future land use designation of residential low density and the subdivision's lack of infrastructure. The streets within this subdivision are narrow paved roadways with no curb, gutter, or sidewalks. Open ditches are located along most of the streets. Staff believes that any additional density within this subdivision with the increased traffic it'll generate will have an increasingly adverse impact on this neighborhood. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the R4 rezoning as requested in items 2 and 3.
Okay, is the applicant here? Now, hang on a second. Each side will have 20 minutes. You only have one person speaking against you on both sides. Each side gets 20 minutes. You can start and talk and defer to them and see what they have to say. You can let them go first. You can go first, however you want to use your time. They go first? Miss Bell, you, on both items, 2 and 3.
Okay. I'm Ruth Bell, as you know, with the League of Women Voters, and this application, these two applications are of concern to us because that's 2 duplexes within a block and a half, as far as I can tell reading the map. And it's a established residential neighborhood, single family, which was there. It and Aldersgate were there for a very long time, and the rest of the city drew that way, and pretty soon they were surrounded with 4 lanes on Canis and the retirement facilities to the south, and some frontage on Canis has office, and then there are a number of on one side up against Aldersgate, there's a number of offices and hospital-related support service entities. But this has been a viable neighborhood since, I estimate, the 1950s. Of concern to adding the duplexes is the fact that it's a lovely neighborhood. It's a viable neighborhood. They have new housing that has come in and done infill housing on some of their vacant lots, but it's got substandard infrastructure because the city of Little Rock often has substandard infrastructure in various parts of town. And we feel that it's inappropriate to approve these duplexes when the infrastructure for handling traffic and other concerns is not up to the task. We hope you will vote no. Thank you.
Okay, would the applicant care to address us?
Yes, my name is Scotty Howard. This is a
Say it
first.
again. Say it again for the record. You're on TV too.
My name is Scotty Howard. This is a first for us. We've never done this before, so this is our first property to purchase as investment properties. We have a friend in real estate who called my partner and I and said there's some dilapidated properties on Wilson Road that you guys would be interested in looking at and purchasing. They've done some renovation to the road in the last 5 years. So we drove down Wilson Road, saw, and we have some pictures in a minute, saw the infrastructure that was taking place. I interviewed real quick, go back. We purchased the properties, and then we found out we had to rezone them, mistake on our fault, but we thought there were so many properties that had been rezoned already. You know, we was purchasing to build townhomes, duplexes, and so we called the rezoning board, and they gave us the context of everything we've been talking about today. And I said, does this mean I don't need to purchase these properties? He said, I can't tell you what to do. I said, with the person before me, he was never turned down, but we are at a point now we feel like that we just need to have this conversation about traffic. And so I began to interview the tenants and the homeowners living in the duplexes, living in the houses. And I have a few on the video in just a second that they love what's happened to their street in the last 5 years. when you take dilapidated properties and bring in nice new townhomes, he said it changes everything. And so I don't know if you guys are familiar with the street or if you've driven down it. It just makes it's a big difference. And so we're not tearing down like nice homes. Like we're tearing out trailers, like that's, very misused, unused areas, and the two wooded areas, they're just stacked up full of trash. And so we're proposing to clean these areas up by putting these in. So I did interview Walter. I did interview a gentleman, and I just put this video together to show you guys some of the stuff we're talking about. This is one of the trailers that's just sitting there vacant, abandoned. Hey, Scotty Howard here with Roe. He lives at 2222 Wilson Road, and I was just asking him questions about the neighborhood. I have found the golden nugget. He's been here 11 years, so he's seen the entire street developed. And so just what's your thoughts on the development? What have you seen the benefit from it?
Much safer place, watching my kids grow up and not having to worry about any hassles or anything like that. The view is much better. When construction is happening, you know that there's progress and things like that that's going on that you want to see move forward. You want to see the progress build, and it's just better, and I appreciate that.
Roe lives towards the end of Wilson Street. I can show you guys on the map. But when you think about, so another switching conversations, but when you think about violence and things like that, as you develop out, what can you speak to that about?
It's pretty easy. When I first got out here, to be honest, I had a couple issues. That was 11 years ago. We're talking about no issues now, none. Maybe 10 years ago. That's what I mean when I mean no issues. So this is a very good place, very safe place for town hall building, for new homes, right actually behind the police station, to be honest with you, so that's even better. So just a really good place for home growth and some development, somewhere to render your children. So yeah.
I appreciate it. Roe can't make it today at 4 o'clock, but he wanted to do this video because he's going to be out of town. So I appreciate it, Roe. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Finding out from the planning development that there was a structured traffic issue, I reached out to the Little Rock Police Department, and I said, can I get a report of the last 5 years of traffic, of accidents reports? And they emailed me that today. There's been 2 accidents on Wilson Road in the last 5 years, and they're just fender benders. And so there's no major traffic. It's an area called 64, and so we've tried to do our homework. And so there's one right there, 1 accident, but there's 2 in the last 5 years, and that's the Little Rock Police Department's report that they emailed me. And so I understand how when someone says there's traffic, but as I interview people, they love the development. They love the bringing up. They love the cleaning. They love taking out the dirty property, that's been there for years. And so right across the street, I'll show you some pictures of where we're building. At the end of the cul-de-sac, they just built this brand new multi-million-dollar complex. It's almost like it's a memory care center. This is stepping 10 feet almost right across the street. If you look at your screen, that's the brand new complex they just built. Wilson is that road right there in the middle. At the end of the tree line, that's the property that we're developing to move the trailers out. All this is visible, all these spots. And so they just put in a very nice memory center, community center, older, individuals who are struggling. And so they're dressing this whole area up. And so we have a few more pictures, but the properties that we're looking at are on that same little chunk block. The top and next row shows the 2 pictures. That's the 2 that we're talking about today. And so both those areas have just trash, unvacant trailers on them. And so we're proposing to come in and to develop those, to bring them up to look like the rest of the street. Because the problem is, the hard part is, it's just consistency. And so you have some and you skip, and some's like a checkerboard. Some's, duplexes, townhomes, and you have old houses, then you have some new houses. So the problem is the consistency of what it all looks like. That's what the police department shared with me. If it could all look good, they don't have any problems. It's just up and down, up and down, up and down. And so we're just asking that you approve us to continue to build what's already on the street, and people love it. 2 people I interviewed today work at Baptist, a few blocks away. It's amazing young families, and so I'm just a little nervous. I've never done this before, but that's all I have to say, I guess. Any questions for me?
Dr. Benton?
Yes, just to recap, the total number of duplexes for both properties?
There's 4 properties, would be 8 doors. Or, I guess the other option would be 4 houses.
Anybody else?
Can staff tell us what the zoning is to the south of this red square right there?
That's a trailer.
That zoning is R7A. It's specifically for that property to allow one single-wide manufactured home.
Commissioner Berry?
I got a question for staff, perhaps Public Works. Because what is the standard on the master street plan for Wilson? And if it were to be improved, how much right-of-way you take in on both sides, and how much pavement would it be as an improvement compared to what it is now?
On the master street plan, it would just be classified as a local street, so it just has that, local designation. The right-of-ways in the plat is very old. The plat of this whole area dates back to, I believe, the early 20s, 1919 into the 20s. It envisioned a small suburban community far outside of Little Rock. That never happened. It's only been in more recent years there's been any interest in development. The streets, the right-of-way platted on the old Hicks interurban plat are quite narrow. As I remember, most of them are only 40 feet. The city has gotten a number of requests over the years to improve these little streets that are back in there. Probably we would look at a reduced standard, a minor residential street, which would be a 24-foot wide street from the back of curb to back of curb, which is our smallest standard, and that would restrict parking on the street because of the narrow width. There's just not much room. The right-of-way was never platted adequate to today's standards.
Anybody else?
How does the city determine when it's time to improve the infrastructure on a street that has development?
The trouble with the city, certainly, and it's probably a problem that's shared with a lot of cities, is we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 miles of unimproved open ditch streets throughout the city in each and every ward. Everyone would like to someday see their street improved. We have a system of taking requests, evaluating them. Staff makes recommendations to the board of directors, but certainly the needs are great, and only a few projects are funded every cycle that funding is available. But we are aware, and there has been a lot of requests for improvements in this area.
Mr. Berry?
Yeah, this raises a good question. The commissioner just talked about is tying decisions we make on land use development transformation with existing infrastructure or lack of capacity for that. And it's compelling in a conventional sense is you want infrastructure to keep up with land use transformation. We share that with other cities. There's always a lag, but I think with the city of Little Rock, the lag is even worse because of public financing. We are years behind in keeping up with needed infrastructure needs for street. So how does the city make a decision, or city staff say, we approved a lot of apartments on Canis Road in South Bowman, which has a lot more traffic it's not at the capacity it needs to be, but we approved even more dense housing there. And where this is infill development, it's a softer density. So how's the city and its decision to proceed? How do we as commissioners look at that? You know, we want to avoid suburban sprawl because it's more costly to develop infrastructure for new and vacant land on its fringes, and we want to encourage infill development. So, you know, we ain't got the taxes to improve roads, but we've got to make land use decisions for transformations that have to happen. That's rhetorical. That's not meant for you, Mike. And that's for other commissioners. You know, as you look at this particular application, I'm going to approve. I vote to approve this application because I think the land use transformation is appropriate. I just don't think we'll ever catch up with infrastructure, even though it's needed. If this had been on a thoroughfare where you have a lot of traffic, I'd say, I'll think about that. But there's, you know, you're not having a lot of through traffic going through here to begin with. But yes, it's a narrow street, and most of us had ridden this on the bus, I believe, a few months ago, and got to see this neighborhood as it is transforming.
Commissioner Hayes? Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo what Commissioner Berry said. I feel like I'm in bizarro world here that we're staff has come out against, and the League of Women Voters has come out against new development in favor of a little mini trailer park there in the neighborhood. So I'm shocked that we're not in favor of this. Obviously, we realize that the infrastructure is not up to par. We get that, but that's the case all over the city. If you rejected new forms of development because infrastructure lagged behind, we would never approve anything, really, if you think about it. So I'm also going to be in favor of these duplexes, and I applaud you guys doing the infill development and turning a neighborhood that could have turned the corner the other way and turning it into something that the folks who live there are proud of.
Dr. Batten?
I want to echo this also. The reason why I asked to confirm how many units, 8 units, 4 units for just, 8 doors. If I put 2 cars a door, there's just not that many cars on the street. And so I have difficulties rationalizing in my brain how in some places in the city we've, I wasn't on the planning commission, but there's just monumental numbers of apartments and areas, and the density is just off the map. So I just can't see how an addition of 10 more cars is going to cause a bottleneck. I vote to approve myself.
Well, my 2 cents worth is I'm going to support the project. I drove down there. I try to drive by most every project. And I appreciate all this discussion because we've had it umpteen, I guess it's the last 30 years. But you drive down that street and you can immediately tell where the new is, and it looks good and it's well kept, and then you hit a trailer or two, and to leave a lot vacant when it could be something productive, and the world wouldn't end with, as he said, with 4 other cars on the street. So I'm for it. With that, I'd entertain a motion.
Okay, a motion for approval of this item with staff recommendations and approval.
Except for that of denial.
Oh, except for the recommendation of denial.
Yes, sir. Okay,
Oh,
this is on item number 2.
Item 2.
That's the motion.
Item number 2.
Okay. So we're going to vote on item number 2 only at the time. I would note to the new commissioners, no matter how the motion sounds, the bottom line is if you're for it, vote yes. If you're against it, vote no. So with that having been said, if you're in favor of item 2, raise your hand. If you're opposed, item 2 is approved. Item 3, is there a motion for item 3?
This one. Mr. Chairman, I motion for approval of item number 3. With all staff recommendations and except for the recommendation of denial.
Is there a second? Any other discussion? All in favor of item 3, raise your hand. Those opposed? Item 3 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
I don't know that I have any business for the commission.
The question I have, I wasn't here last meeting about Bowman, and obviously this issue come up today. How do we as a commission address where we think there might need to be infrastructure improvements prioritized versus not? Is that something that we should try and address in a public setting here, and can we address that, or is it too, difficult?
I'll defer to staff on that magic wand.
The answer is yes. I mean, I think I spoke when we presented the code revisions that I felt that, and talked with several of the commissioners, the need for the commission to be more involved in the studies that was presented and has been done at the board level and the commission level. One of the studies that we've done last year in particular, and that, in hindsight, once we started talking all this, is we did study that Hicks interurban subdivision, and we did speak at the time with a developer of the area that done the duplexes, and trying to be more open about what we do and our concerns in the infrastructure, and then done an analysis of what we think a percentage of mix would be in that area. And it's kind of like, when do you want the character of the neighborhood to change? Yes, I am 100% in agreement. We do want redevelopment and infill, but it is also our duty as staff and the commission's duty to look at that type of infrastructure and when we think that tipping point is, and because you can't put double the amount of the population in that subdivision with the infrastructure that you have. So there will be a point that when you get that density, we need to have a plan, in place to improve the roadways. I don't know how many, but we looked at that. And so the intent of the future of the commission, I would hope, would be that as we do these studies, and the commission can request the studies to be done, that we will involve the commissioners at their request to look at those, so that, and that was some of that intent when we went out and drove you around in the area that we see in some of the duplexes. I wanted to get y'all involved in some of the aspects of what we look at when we look at the roadway. Yes, there is roads out there, but in this particular subdivision, they were annexed in, and that was, and Mr. Berry brought that up, a lot of that was brought in mass annexations by vote and some other deals that we got old county roads that are substandard. And they've been substandard, and that's Ward 6 has them, several wards have them. And so what do? Well, if we did every road that we have like that, it's well over $1 billion. I think our estimates for the ones we got was $1 billion, right? Over $1 billion. So you're correct. We're not going to fix every road, but we have to weigh that. And so the intent and reason you heard staff's recommendation was we want the commission involved in looking at these areas when we see an area that's coming in for redevelopment and trying to figure out what that point is. And so, no, the intent of is these 8, doors you're talking about, they're not the tipping point, but there is coming a time that we have to decide what we're going to do with Hicks interurban, and we need to understand that. And so the infrastructure, it wasn't the redevelopment was staff's recommendation, we understand that. It's the infrastructure support. And when it gets to a point that we know we have problems, and there's been complaints of drainage, complaints of roads, complaints that when people are parked on the roadways, the widths of the roads are not wide enough to allow bus traffic to go down, or trash traffic, and the operators of the duplexes do go out there and move them and try to get the stuff out of the way and work with it. So it has not been just developers coming and developing and not caring about the neighborhood. That has not been the case. But we need to look out for that every time. And so I would challenge the commission to get involved in our stuff and ask the your staff that supports the commission to look at studies like that we've done. And we have examples I'll be happy to forward to you that we can look at areas that you want to. I think Commissioner Berry also brought up a look at the parking downtown, which is also a concern. And we're going to look at that. We're going to propose a study. Hopefully will be approved and funded to look at the downtown land use and master plan for the downtown. So those are the things that we really need to look at, that y'all have the authority to request that. Now, then I have to go find the funding to do so if staff can't do it. And then I have to come back and say, well, we can't get the funding to do that. We have to postpone that. But we'd be more than happy to look at areas that the commission wants to study and present, and then we can present it in at one of these meetings, right prior to citizen communication, and so discussions can be had to kind of start having some guided decisions on how we look at infrastructure.
One example, I grew up in Fort Smith, which had one 4-lane street, and it stopped halfway out of town. And they dedicated a 1-cent sales tax, and for the last probably 30 or time gets away, but at least 30, maybe 40 years, that's been dedicated to the streets, and they've gone from having some of the worst streets in the world to some of the best. So one answer is you dedicate a tax to it, but the citizens have to vote then. The citizens have to be convinced that that's the best use of the money. And so it is a problem. Anything else? We're adjourned.